Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Whew, boy, I got to get the use of my lips back there, folks. And welcome to the Power of Man podcast, everybody. You guys know I don't edit, so that's going to stay in there forever. We're going to be over episode 400 here soon, and this is going to be a fun one. So, folks, I want to thank you all for being here today. You all know that, hey, my name's Rory Paquette, and I just like to remind myself and you how grateful I am to be sitting here doing what I'm doing. And if it wasn't for all of you out there, who are liking and sharing and subscribing and goodness, sending DMs like right and left. You guys, I don't know why you love talking to me so much, but I'm blessed that you do. So I'm going to get back with every one of you who's waiting to hear from me, I promise. Folks, as we move forward, well, you know what time it is. So time to pay a couple of bills. Let's, take a sip of our preferred beverage. Man, that stuff is perfect. And you all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up and check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. It's a fantastic cup of joe, and they do all the right things for all the right reasons, including supporting veterans, which you all know is incredibly important to us here at the Power of Man podcast. If you are a veteran out there, I want to thank you and your family for your sacrifice and for your service and for everything that you do. If you hadn't gone and done what you did, folks, I wouldn't even be able to speak up here. And I know that's true because they've tried to stop me and they haven't been able to yet. And it's because of folks like you. We love you and we're glad you found a home here at the Power Man podcast. And hey, so is Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up and check them out and tell them the Power of Man sent you. Now, let me get another sip of this incredibly hot, delicious beverage so I can keep up with this young buck on the other side of the table from me. He is raring to go. All right, folks. This our guest today. This guy's had 25 years in pastoral ministry. He is an author of the book The Wilderness Way: Finding Freedom in Life's Fractures. He's also a coach, which we're going to talk about. Former pastor. He's got a Substack. He does music. He has a kids book coming. He's got a podcast. This guy is so busy. I don't know how he had time for our show, but I am glad that he did. Please welcome to our show, Dustin Kleinschmidt. Dustin, how you doing, brother?
Great, Rory. Thanks for having me. I'll be honest, young buck is not something I've been called much in recent years, so I'll take it. Like I'm not, I'm gonna absolutely accept that one. But of all the things I've been called, that's not been on the list.
Gotcha. Well, hey, I'm glad I could make your day, but
That's great.
everybody knows I'm, Methuselah over here and older than anybody thinks. So
Good
it
pull, by the way.
it works out. But yeah, I heard in one of your podcasts that I was listening to one of the episodes that you were talking about as you head into the final third of your life, and I was like, how old is this guy? What is he like, 25 or 30 or something? And he's talking about the final third of his life. So
No, my Joe. I'm 51. So yeah, I mean, yeah, final quarter would probably be more accurate, more likely than not. My wife and I have well, I have a deal with her. She hasn't agreed to said deal, but I get to go first. That's what I've decided. So whether or not that happens or not, we'll see. But yeah.
wow. I mean, if you can write down how to actually have that conversation and get away with it, you need to put that in an ebook or something and get that out immediately because that'd be a bestseller. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. All right. Listen, Dustin, there's so many things that you do, so many things we could talk about. Uh, just to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Who is Dustin Kleinschmidt? What are you about, and kind of what brought you to where you are today?
So Dustin grew up in Southern California, in a single parent home for basically from middle school on. But before that, a really uh, messy, let's say messy childhood environment. My mom and biological dad divorced before I was even 2 years old. My stepdad after that was physically and emotionally abusive. Physically more so to my mom, emotionally and a little bit of physical to me. So it was a chaotic environment, and you don't know how much that is shaping you until years later. But didn't grow up in and around faith or anything, but just was kind of being a normal kid. And my mom and I moved out on our own when I was in middle school. That's really where I started to kind of find friends and relationships and other guys in my life that, we kind of had this ride or die little crew that we developed that ultimately, like, I still have really close ties with some of those guys today. And it's been, 30 plus years. Just was a normal kid, normal in the sense of like not a great student, got really good at ditching school, Was never not a lot of felonies, but quite a few misdemeanors. It was kind of my thing. So I wasn't the kid going all the way over the deep end, but I was definitely dancing on the edge of the deep end of the pool.
I
That was kind
appreciate
of
you.
my
Yeah. Giving us the difference there. It's
yeah, I
important to
mean,
point out.
like I wasn't a bad kid, but I definitely wasn't a great one. And my mom was just hanging on for dear life. She was working 60 hours a week as a single mom. I would buy her Father's Day gifts every year just because she was hustling and doing both things. And
Yeah.
started engaging faith in high school. A friend of mine started inviting me to his youth group. Long story short, ultimately became a follower of Jesus and was in that church. In that church, I found the family I didn't have in many ways. So if I had the friends in middle school, when in high school, I found this family and I found some male figures, small group leaders, Steve, one of them, who was with me from my sophomore years through my senior year, as well as all the guys in our grade. And man, that guy just, he became in many ways a dad I didn't have. He discipled us well and encouraged us and challenged us. And he was a no BS guy. And we did small groups. Think about this for high school boys. We did small groups at his house at 6:30 a.m. Monday mornings.
Wow.
And yeah, and his thing was like, "Hey, I'll be awake and I'll be here. If you guys don't show up, I'll spend my time in the Bible and then I'm going to head off to work." And for whatever reason, we would drag our little butts out of bed and drive over and meet him and spend time. And he was just that guy. And so that was really formative to me in terms of my own development, but also my heart to invest in others, especially young leaders and young people.
Yeah.
And so in that, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. You started playing guitar because girls like guys who play guitar. So that's, I literally walked into a music store blind and said, I want to buy an acoustic guitar. And he's like, do you know what you want? I'm like, I have no idea. And 20 minutes later, I walked out with an acoustic guitar. I don't even think I bought a tuner. I think he gave me some picks and a guitar, and I had a friend teach me some chords. And then I just started playing like obsessively on my own. And
Hmm.
by the time I hit early college, by then I had become roommates with our college pastor. And the joke is, I knew four chords, he knew three chords. That made me the worship guy, the music guy for the group. And so
Right.
it's I had a minor chord that he didn't have, and so that made me the guy. And our house, the house we were renting, really was like the hub of this, 60 or so college students from different colleges in our area in Southern California. And so our house was where everyone hung out. It's where we did, small groups, where we did leadership meetings. It's where, we hung out, playing board games till 3 a.m. It's where I met my wife, is in that college group. So yeah, it was again, so like I went from this guy Steve to now this guy Dave, who became another formative developing investment thing. I pursued a career in the music business for 7 years, got a record deal. And I use air quotes when I say record deal. It was a production deal and it was legitimate, but getting a deal in no way equals success. It's a long journey from there. And played a bunch of clubs. It was a very Spinal Tap thing. Go through a bunch of different musicians, and you're just
Yeah.
kind of trying to find your way. And we weren't bad, but we definitely weren't good enough to become top tier musical material. And I was actually on stage in a club, and there's only a few times in my life where I can say God was, adjacent to audible. And I was on stage in a club called the Coconut Teaser. It was on Hollywood and Highland. I was at, was it not Hollywood and Highland? It was La Cienega and Highland, I think. And it was like in the middle of a show on like a Tuesday night. There's probably 20 people in the room at the most. And it was like the Lord's like, okay, you're done. And I remember having this moment of like, I'm done with this song. Like I was confused, and because it's not a, it was such an abstract thought. It wasn't something I would have thought of at all. But I went home to my roommate Dave and said, "Hey man, I think I'm done with the rock star thing." And he goes, "That's really interesting." He's like, "I've been wanting to hire a full-time student ministries music and worship director." He goes, "I thought of you." He's like, "But you were kind of on this track, and so I didn't want to interrupt that." And we explored it, and we, wrote up a proposal and took it to the elders of our church, thinking there's no way in heck they're going to hire me full time. I hadn't, I'd barely gotten through a semester of college. Like I was not in any way no theological training other than having been in that church for a long time, and no formal musical training for the most part. I mean, I had developed and I had taught myself, but I had not didn't get a music degree or anything. And lo and behold, those guys hired us or hired me full time. And so that's how I kind of fell into ministry. I'd never planned to be a pastor. Like that was not on the bingo card in any way, shape, or form.
Wow.
And yeah, so we did that for 7 years. And then when the economic things changed in LA with the housing market, my position ended up being cut. And I took a position in Dallas, in the Dallas area at a church as kind of like a music and then small groups discipleship kind of pastor. And that was kind of where a lot of the deeper formation came in. Didn't realize how healthy of a leadership environment I had been in until I got into what turned out to be a really unhealthy leadership environment,
Uh,
which is part of the journey and part of what I talk about in the book and stuff. Um, and then left from there to plant a church and started our own church out of that church, which lasted until about a year and some change into COVID. That was really kind of we had nursed it along. We were doing okay until COVID, and then it kind of you're trying to figure out what the heck to do, and then it became a clear to us that we were going to have to start over if we if after COVID kind of released and we could get back into space and stuff. And we just felt like that was going to be too much for our people who had invested 4 years of their lives, energy into it. So yeah, so we handed off that or let that go. And in the midst of that, the church I had been at for all those years earlier, their senior pastor had resigned. He said it was because of burnout. It came out not too far after that he had been having an affair.
oh,
And they
ouch.
were in, yeah, they were in a really bad spot. And their leadership ultimately said, "Hey, would you come back and help us figure this out?" And so I went back there, knowing it was going to be a really, really messy transition. Did that for 3 years, and then ultimately gave my resignation at the end of 2023. Just I burned out, and the way I described it, I think when I announced it was, I've spent so much of my time fighting with this church, I can no longer fight for this church because there was
Oh,
so
wow.
much distrust and hurt, and people trying to fill in leadership vacuums, all that kind of stuff, and narratives about like why is Dustin back? Is he trying to take over? So all of that, and then my own just burnout, just wearing myself out trying to appease everyone and please everyone, and stick every landing every week and all that kind of stuff. And so
Right.
that's stepped out of that. And that was actually, ironically, I thought that was going to be a relief. And that's where actually the depression and anxiety really nailed me. I had my first anxiety attack 3 months after I resigned, ever.
Hmm.
And which led into, this kind of deep dive that turned into the book. But you definitely went through counseling and I spent the last 2+ years trying to kind of like, oh, okay, let's dig a little deeper and figure out who Dustin is and what Dustin's about. And in the midst of that, got to use that to develop curriculum and utilizing these different platforms and the coaching stuff to really help me to be able to lean back in with others and help them navigate the waters of the world that we live in.
I mean, a wonderful story, and my gosh, you unpacked a lot. So I'm like, hmm, got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah. Like people usually do like 2 times speed on a podcast. They may want to go half speed.
You got to
It-
rewind and just listen again to some of the stuff that he's laying out. So, I do want to make a quick, lighthearted comment on the, I knew a fourth chord over the third chord.
yes.
People today don't understand what music in church was like when you and I were growing up.
Yeah,
It just
totally.
because now you walk into a church and you have like the Technicolor and the lights and it's a whole big
Hmm.
full-fledged production, from ground up, and
Yeah.
they think that's normal. And it's like, no, you were lucky if you could find a guy to play a guitar or a piano and do anything.
Yeah. And we were fumbling our way through, man. It was not pretty. I mean, if God loves a joyful noise, we were fine, but
There you go. Exactly.
it was really rough, in those early days for sure.
Appreciate you framing it that way though. And it's funny because I know that folks who are our age are going to be like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, the with everything that you laid out, let's start with, I know you do some coaching and things like that, and you've got a coaching
Hmm.
business. Most coaches that I know come from a childhood that was, kind of hard. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the things that drives us into coaching is that we did not have what we needed. So
Hmm.
we try to be the thing that we needed and didn't have. Does that seem to kind of fit you? And is that a piece of what you're trying to do is make up for maybe that part of your life?
Yeah, 100%. And like I said in my story, like there were these couple guys that really became these huge anchors.
Well,
And again, at the time, you don't even necessarily see how formative that is.
mhm.
And you frankly take it for, at least I did. I took it for granted. Like, and then when I stepped into a new church environment with a really unhealthy leader, then it was like, oh, like this isn't how the rest of the world works. Like, not everyone has real supportive leaders around them. Like Dave, the college pastor, I mean, he really struck a beautiful balance between guiding me and then giving me room to play in the sandbox and not like micromanaging. You know, when we were developing this like worship department thing, it was like, hey man, go build it and I'm here. And he would give input, and then in the midst of that, I was asked to teach at a chapel at a Christian school about worship, and so I went and taught. And he snuck in the back and he listened and he was like, "Hey, you did a pretty good job. Maybe we should develop this." And so then he's investing. So then it's like he's got me teaching in high school ministry and he's got me helping out here. And he's going, "Okay, bring me your notes before you teach and let's talk it through." And then the day afterwards, he's sitting down with me going, "Hey, let's process. How do you feel it went?" Again, so like these coaching type things that I was getting that I didn't even realize were that valuable or that rare were significant. And it absolutely um, is part of what drove me, as well as that lack in my own life. Growing up as a latchkey kid in the 80s,
Mhm.
like I said, my mom's working 60 hours a week. She's just trying to keep me from, she's trying to get me to go to school sometimes. Basically, it's where we're at.
Yeah.
And so that was significant, and absolutely, I think it drives me. And like I had a coaching appointment yesterday, and I leave encouraged from those conversations. So it's as much in many ways self-serving as it is for the other person,
Yeah.
because it is. Yeah, you love seeing people, if possible, bypass some of the mistakes you make and discover for themselves things that you wish you had discovered earlier on, and those types of things.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you, addressing that. The book itself, The
Mhm.
Wilderness Way, Finding Freedom in Life's Fractures.
Mhm.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what the book is, and then I got a follow-up question for you on that.
Yeah. So the book, it didn't start as a book. It just started as my journaling in this season. Like I said, I stepped out of that role. I had been in ministry for 25 years. I started out in ministry in the church that I grew up in many ways. So I kind of never knew a world apart from that. I used to say, up until actually just a couple of weeks ago, I used to say that I think that in many ways my identity and my sense of worth and value were attached to ministry. I've come to actually believe there's a little more nuance to it, that my sense of worth and value were attached to significance, and ministry was the
Mm.
vehicle for significance, which was a very interesting kind of like twist in the plot in some ways, because, and not significance in the sense of wanting to be famous. I'm actually really uncomfortable with accolades and some of that childhood stuff and the shame cycles and stuff. So, but it is like I do want to make a difference. Like there's a beautiful part of me that wants to make a difference. But then the shadow side of that is then when I don't feel like I'm making a difference, then suddenly my worth and my sense of value starts to spin a little bit. So ministry really was a big part of that. So when I stepped out of that role, it was a significant emotional collapse. It was 3 months after I resigned. We're visiting another church, and I have an anxiety attack, which I've never had in my life. And got connected with a counselor, started going through that, and really started to kind of articulate to my counselor and to God that I was pretty pissed off. Like it's one thing when you do something wrong and then you pay a consequence for it. So it's something I can fairly easily reconcile. it was really clear to us, my wife and I, that God wanted us to go back to that church that was in crisis and help them, even though we knew it was going to be hard. And so I had a little bit of a quid pro quo going on in the back of my head where it was like, oh, because I'm doing what he told me to, then it's somehow we're going to stick the landing and it's going to work itself out. And then when it didn't, I was very, very lost.
Mhm.
And so that became the genesis of the book because I think what God started teaching me in the midst of that, well, I don't think I know what he started teaching me is, hey, every disappointment we have is built on an unmet expectation. And it was in essence like I was saying, hey, you're spending a lot of time telling me about your disappointments, but you're not examining your expectations. And I never promised you that everything was going to be hunky dory. In fact, if you read a Bible, more often than not, it says the opposite. Like
Right.
in this world, you will have trouble. And that, and so there's funny moment. Okay. So pastor guy who finally did go to seminary, learned Greek and Hebrew, has taught these passages is going, oh, wait, like, how did I mean, I knew that, but I didn't know it. Or I knew it until it wasn't serving me. And then all of a sudden it's this kind of spiral. So in all of that, the framework of the story of Israel, where they are rescued from slavery in Egypt, and they're told about a promised land that they will one day inherit and receive, but then they spend 40 years in the wilderness. And so I started thinking about that in light of I've been rescued from slavery. In other words, I'm no longer a slave to sin and death. I've given my life to Christ. And so, like, ultimately, I'm free. And one day there will be a promised land. Revelation talks about, no more sorrow, no more tears, wipe away every tear from your eyes. God's home will be among his people. So then what is this life? Well, this life is a wilderness. Like, it is always a mix of beauty and brokenness. And you're going to have the best days and the worst days, and sometimes in the same day. Um, and so for me, it was such a radical transformation of my thought process of going, oh, okay. Yeah, when hard things happen, I can go, yeah, wilderness, and I got to navigate it, and I can grieve it, and I can work through it. And it doesn't mean that I did something wrong necessarily. Maybe I did, but it doesn't have to be. My childhood was not a result of me doing something wrong. It was other people's brokenness getting on me. And did that shape me? 100%.
Yeah.
But that's part of wilderness.
Yeah, I love the wilderness analogy, and what you were talking about. And it seems kind of clear where the book came from, and that type of thing. But, not everybody who goes through a healing process or any sort of thing like you did, the he puts it down in writing. I mean,
True.
now you're a creative guy. You're doing music. You're doing that kind of thing. So I can see that. I think the question that I have, as I looked into the book a little bit, of course, and hey, total transparency, I have not had a chance to read it yet. Looking forward to it
It's
though,
okay.
so for sure will. But usually when we write a book, and I mean book in particular, we all have creative outlets, but when we write a book, there's something that's so personal about it, and there's something that's so sort of from within about it
Mm-hmm.
that I find that, for myself and for many of the authors that I talk to, that when you're writing a book, you're talking to someone or you're writing the book for someone. In your case, who were you writing the book to or for?
We came to define it later with my editor. But at the time of writing it, I probably was writing it honestly to myself in some ways, telling my own story to me
Oh,
and wrestling through those things. And then again, that coaching impulse or that teaching pastoral impulse to be like, I got to share this with somebody.
yeah.
Um, Ultimately it was what we refined it to is the idea of frustrated Christians. So there's a version of Western Christianity that is both explicit and implicit that we we've put our faith in God and then everything works itself out. And I talk about it in the book. There's a term coined by a guy named John Wellwood called spiritual bypassing. And he was a sociologist that studied Buddhist communities. And that's where he originally coined it, the idea of trying to basically spiritualize your way, detaching from the realities of life. And this happens in Christianity way more than anyone would want to admit. And so what we do, hard things happen to someone and we paint a verse on it. God works all things for the good. And so we're really quick to chase the resolution or the hallmark ending, which
Yeah.
again, God is working all things to the good.
Right.
But we suck at lament. Like we just do. We're not good at being able to sit in something and go, yeah, this really sucks. And I don't know what to do with it. And we're not good at doing that with ourselves. We're not good at doing that with God, even though that's exactly what faith is. Faith is coming to God who wears big boy pants and going, hey man, this ain't cool. Like I'm not saying you did something wrong. I'm just saying I feel like this is unfair.
Yeah.
Again, Job, this is the story. The whole book of Job is this story. It's Job going, hey, I don't think I did anything to warrant this, but you're still God. And then Job's friends going, you got, you must have done something. Like nobody goes through all this for nothing. And it's 40 plus chapters of him and his boys arguing over whether or not he did something wrong. And then you throw in his wife saying, just curse God and die. And so that was really helpful. Like really helpful. Yeah. Thanks, sweetie.
Quite the summary.
Yes. A paraphrase version.
It's
And
okay.
ultimately, Job is never told why it all happened. He's never given the, oh,
Mm.
I'm teaching a lesson. God just says at the end of the book of Job, God says, gird your loins, which means buckle up, buttercup. We're going to have a conversation here.
Right.
And then what does he do? He starts saying, well, where were you when I created the foundations of the earth? Where were you when I taught goats how to walk up the side of a cliff? I mean, this is what God's saying. And Job, to his credit, goes, you're right. I'm not you. It's all good. I get it. And Job and God's like, no, 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 we're not done with this conversation. And then doubles down and continues to form him. And so yeah, so there's this, I think you asked who I was talking to. I'm talking to frustrated Christians who sense that incongruence in their spiritual life and in their real life and going like, am I supposed to just fake it to make it? Like, what does it look like to have a genuine and authentic faith
Yeah.
that doesn't wallow in self-pity and doesn't like just go, oh, well, I guess it's going to be this. And at the same time can be brutally honest about the realities of the world we live in. I mean, you talked earlier about veterans and just your heart for veterans and serving veterans. Like, I mean, my dad was a veteran. Like you go through really, really hard things, and to just kind of skate over the top of that stuff is not helpful or healthy. And so, but there's got to be there's something in there. There's I don't think there's an easy middle like you just land it and solve it. But there's a wilderness to navigate in that,
Yeah.
and you have different seasons in the wilderness and how you bring those things to God, embody those things yourself, and then how you share them with those you trust really makes a difference in how we flourish in life.
I love that. And, there's so many people who are sort of in that in between, who
Mhm.
are, have been hurt, have been confused.
Mhm.
Some of them feel like they've kind of been let down.
Yes.
There's no shortage of different types of church hurt. So, the church hurt that kind of drove you out of the ministry after 25 years, was that mostly sort of being let down by like the church and or the pastor and his affair and stuff like that? You mentioned burnout.
Mhm.
What was the church hurt that kind of pushed you away, and have you been able to reconcile with that since then?
Yeah, and so for me, it was layers. So, and these things are very rarely like moment changes. They're erosion,
Right.
right? So there's
Yeah.
this kind of slow erosion that happens. So when I went back to that church to take over, I remember. I mean, my wife and I talked and prayed about it, and it was like we knew the environment we were walking into. You have a church where their senior pastor who had planted the church, who could do no wrong in everyone's eyes, turns out really had a lot of significant issues. And when he resigned and it came out he had been having an affair, the staff there at the church, this is a church at the time, probably a church of about 800. It's right at the beginning of COVID. This all happens right around COVID. And in the middle of that, they had just finished the full frame out of their first building ever, which means their first full mortgage ever. Right. So
Right.
I jokingly say it's the trifecta of things that kill churches. You've got a pastoral moral failure, a global pandemic, and a building project. Like nothing is the worst trio for churches than that.
Yeah.
So he resigns. The staff revolts against the then elders because it's like there's just no trust. Like, well, like what did you guys know? What have you been covering up? So then those elders resign. So now you've got like literally no leadership in the church. And so the guy that replaced me and the guy that was kind of helping out with some of the teaching stuff, like they kind of start to rebuild a ragtag group from within that church of people who had been in leadership or around leadership that they could trust. Some who were trustworthy, some who really were posturing to try and be the next guy, right? And so you've got all this kind of chaos going on, and then they're like, "Hey, would you come consult?" That was the initial thing, come consult. And I'm like, I can do that. And within one meeting, I was like, I know exactly what needs to happen. You need an interim executive pastor who can stabilize things so that you elders aren't making all the decisions. You can give some breathing space. He can manage things. And they said, would you do that? And I was like, oh, crap.
So you weren't crafting the job for yourself at that point,
No,
thinking, "Hey, I'd be great at this." You were like, "Someone else can have this job."
no, not at all. And so again, so then my wife and I are like, okay, because I know I've been around the church world long enough to know what a kick in the teeth this is going to be.
Yeah.
And the reality of the narrative was going to be and became as soon as I stepped in that interim role, I was like, oh, Dustin's posturing to take over. And I was like, no, actually, I would prefer to be almost anywhere else at this point. Like, to say the least. And then,
Wow.
so I did it I committed to 6 months. About 4 months in, I got offered a position in another church because I continued looking for the next thing. One, we had moved about 30 minutes away, and we really didn't want to move back to that town. Like, we really loved where we were. Our kids were established again. We had built some roots where we had planted. And so we're like, we just want to stay here. And so we were commuting in and out, which is a weird dynamic. And, it's hard to be part of a church that you commute into
Sure.
if you're really going to be leading it and be part of the community,
The community, right?
Yeah, that's a big piece. So so I got offered a position in their church. I went back to these guys and said, hey, just as a heads up, I'm considering this. And they said, well, would you consider coming back and being one of our lead guys? And that was where it was like, okay, we pray about it, we talk about it. I would say that God wanted us to do it for sure. There was a savior complex in me, 100%. There
Wow.
was 100% in me the desire to rescue and fix what was broken. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be honest to say that no, like it was just clearly the Lord. And I do believe God wanted us to step back into that. I misjudged how deep and dark it was, how isolating it would become as a leader, and how much it would cost me and my family in terms of just relationship and all that. So when I stepped back in, it was fighting all those different voices simultaneously. You've got people on one side who are like, hey man, you got to stabilize things. Like it's been chaos. And you got people on the other side going, okay, you're here. Now we got to take new ground. We got to stop just sitting around with our thumbs up our rear ends. And then you've got people who are going, okay, but why are you really here? Like, what are you really up to? Right. And then you've got the people who are going, well, hey, like, the other guy taught this way, and I don't like that you said this way. And then, so you've got, there's 1,000 narratives going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
And again, we had a new building. And so now because I'm stepping in and there's instability, one of the former elders that I believe was absolutely posturing took like 60 people and went to go plant a church because they didn't hire him as the guy. And so now budgets are an issue. So now we're cutting staff and we're taking pay cuts so all of that is going on simultaneously. And I'm doing my best to tend to my own emotional and spiritual and mental health and stuff, but it wears. And so those fights accumulate over time to the point where I was just like, I can't, it was the first chapter of the book, and it was in an elder meeting, and two young leaders crashed the meeting and basically went around the room telling all of these adult men who have been in leadership for a long time why they weren't good leaders and why they couldn't follow them anymore. And I'll be honest, I'm sitting there, armed, head back, going like, WTF? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I
how do I handle
hear,
this? Exactly.
yeah. So I'm thinking what I'm going to hear from the other elders is, hey guys, like this is no, like you, but what I heard was, well, what's your guys' ideas? And I was like, oh no, oh no, no, no. And I left and I got in the car and I called my wife and I just said, I don't see a way forward for me because now I got to fire these two guys. Like they said they can't follow our leadership. So if I'm going to stay as the leader, they got to go, which means more blowback to me because now I'm cleaning house again,
Right.
right? And I just decided in, over the course of the next couple of days, like it would be easier for me to walk away than it would be for me to try and, bleed out trying to keep pushing this forward.
Yeah. No, I understand. I'm sorry they got to that point. With the book, the way you have it set up, it's your story, it sounds like.
In
Uh,
many ways, yeah.
right, in many ways. But then there's also a whole actionable piece to this in terms of, taking yourself through the healing, the program itself, so on,
Hmm.
because you've got a companion workbook with this. So tell everybody about
Yes.
that and how that the synergy of those two things.
Yeah, it was really good. So the workbook really was, well, one, it was born out of a friend of mine. You had asked if we had been able to re-enter a church. We have, and there's a church that we're a part of now, that we're really enjoying, and we're a part of. I'm leading a small. I help co-lead a guy's small group, and my wife and I are leading a couples group, and we're just kind of low key. Like, I give input when I'm asked, but like it's a pretty good sized church. They don't need me. I'm cool. Like you guys do you. Um, I'll send the occasional text to my executive pastor friend, like, hey man, that was pretty bad. But for the most part, we're just enjoying being part of it and enjoying being part of the community. And who knows if I will step back into a role at any point. But um, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Getting back into the
I
church. That's okay.
Yeah, so we
All
went
right.
back into the church. So that's where the genesis of the workbook came from. Was my friend saying, "Hey, why don't we? Would you be willing to write a workbook around your book that we can take a group of guys through?" And so it was really healthy, like you were helpful, and like you said, is going like, okay, I've got this book that's my story and it's conceptual and it's theological, but what does that mean tomorrow when I go to work? What does that
Right.
mean today with my wife? What does that mean as I self-reflect on myself? And so that's really what the workbook does. Is it's basically on average 2 chapters per session. It's a 6 session workbook, and it focuses on 3 areas primarily. Spiritual health. So what spiritually, like what your relationship to God in light of this conversation, emotional health, your relationship to yourself. Like, what do you observe in light of what you're learning from this about yourself? What things maybe stand out that didn't stand out before? What patterns are you seeing that maybe you need to address and start to take steps towards? And then the third one is relational health. Like, who knows about this other than you? Like, who are you talking to? Who will you give permission to speak into these things meaningfully? Because left to our own devices, we learn things and then they just cycle back around.
Yeah.
So the workbook gives some of those actionable steps of like, how do I take this concept of wandering the wilderness and then begin to actually implement the freedom side of it each day going forward, And so it really was a really helpful piece.
Excellent. I want to get into the coaching a little bit too.
Yeah.
You are a coach of other ministry leaders, and you focus on things like the spiritual weight that they have to carry, the isolation that they feel in making decisions, and the tension that comes along with the job. Those are the three things that I saw on your website from what you kind of focus your coaching around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why coaching? And in terms of how to get this message across, and why those three things?
Yeah, why coaching primarily was because it's the thing that I was like, man, I really wish I had this at different points. Not just when it was really, really hard in ministry, but even church planting or, having an external voice from your ecosystem is really, really valuable. It's especially the higher up the totem pole you get. Like, so a lead pastor, like I could sit and I mean, theoretically elders do this, but this is not always in practice how it works because those guys have full-time jobs and families and, their own stuff going on. And so they can only be as engaged as they can be. And they really do in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, they entrust the senior pastor to do 90% of the heavy lifting. But what that does is it creates an environment, it creates an echo chamber, where,
Hmm.
as long as he's not doing anything really bad, cool. You want to try something different? We'll do something different. You want to, whatever, like there, but it's not collaborative in that way. And that can lead you down a really messy path. So that's part of it. The other thing is that most pastors don't have people pastoring them for two reasons. One, their own pride and sense that they've got it figured out or are supposed to have it figured out. And two, the narrative in and around church culture of that's the guy that has it figured out. And so if I ever shared with someone, hey, this is what's going on right now. I'm struggling with depression. Like it's like it's all of a sudden like, well, then how can I let you teach me on Sundays, kind of thing. So again, it's never just one or the other. It's always a mix of my own messiness and that. So the coaching really came out of like, I want to be able to be a voice for that. I have enough experience in enough areas. And so those became the things the kind of like, how do you handle the crisis? Who can you talk to so you're not complaining down or sideways, and the last thing you want is the senior pastor running around like his hair's on fire. But sometimes he needs someone to talk to. And then I work with other ministry leaders. I work with leaders who are not senior pastors, and for them, it's like, man, like I see some things in him or in her that I don't know what to do. How do I address that? Okay, well, how do you be faithful to your role and serve them, even though they're not a perfect leader, because there are no perfect leaders.
Right.
So you've got like, so you're always doing that. And then, a key thing for me is attending to your own like ownership of yourself. Because the one thing you do have control over is you. You may not be able to control the guy you work for, but you can control you. And so
Yeah.
how aware of yourself are you? How intentional are you with how you are um, navigating your own challenges? So that kind of became the impetus for it, and it's been really good so far. It's been, we're still kind of ramping it up and trying to figure out like how to best do it, but it's been really healthy and helpful for the people who have been involved in it, and it's cool to see them start to kind of find a voice maybe in a new area.
That's great. That is. Now, I got to ask you because there's a lot of folks who have heard the term PK, the preacher's kid, and stuff like that. You've got a
Mhm.
wife and you've got kids, and we have a lot of
Yes.
parents on this program, especially a lot of dads,
Yes.
and we have a lot of pastors who listen to us, which I have been finding
Interesting.
out in the recent last year, especially. Um, what's that been like with everything else that you've done with your 25 years of experience, with being a coach, with writing the book, and all the while you're raising, a couple of preacher kids?
Yes.
What's
So we
what's
have
that been like?
three. Yeah, it's been a hoot. We have three.
Yep.
Oldest Riley is 23 now. Middle Keegan is 20, and our youngest Kaylee is 14. She's the girl and she's the native Texan. So uh, we always said, Riley is the oldest. We always told him, hey, we'll pay for counseling because you're a guinea pig. Um, so we knew we didn't have a fat clue what we were doing. More so me. My wife's a full-time nurse. That's what she does vocationally. And she's amazing. She's all the things I'm not. And early on when Riley and Keegan, when the two younger ones before we had Kaylee, I was very married to ministry at the time. Like I was very like ministry was everything. When we were in Southern California and I was getting started and stuff and building a new thing, it was consuming in every way. And so, she was a lot of times a single mom. And so I had to over time, learn how to reorient my priorities and to be present when I was with them, not just be physically present, but be present, like not thinking about a message or thinking about what I had to do tomorrow at work or what is it like for me to be faithful to be here right now. And I don't know that I did it great, but that was always the pursuit. As well as my wife and I both came from broken childhood. So our commitment was we're breaking the cycle, not perfectly, but we're breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
Cycles of addiction, cycles of abuse. We're going to, cycles of divorce. Like we're going to do our best to create an environment where those cycles change. And by the grace of God, we've been able to do a lot of that. Riley was the most challenging of our three PKs, because he's the most like me.
It's
The
always like
little
that, isn't it?
knuckle, yeah, it's
Always like
little
that.
knucklehead. Um, and us moving, they don't remember the move from California because they were younger. But the move from our first place in Texas to our second place when we planted the church was really hard for him. He was starting high school. And so he had to uproot all of his friends, move 30 minutes away, and try and figure it out. And so he went through a pretty significant season of rebellion, you know, sneaking out, doing dumb things.
Sure.
We've had a few visits from the police. He went through a season of severe depression and, to the point of not wanting to live anymore.
Oh, wow.
Um, and we've navigated with him. And he's on the other side of it and he's doing good. It works at a restaurant as a bartender, has some great roommates, and his faith isn't as focused as I'd like it to be, but he's he's in. And the biggest thing that I think we've learned, and this is what I would encourage, for your audience, I had to learn how to direct and discipline and retain the relationship.
Hmm.
Because a big part of me was like, I said this, you did that, you're getting in trouble. And, um, or you're wrong and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And it's like, cool, I could tell him why he's wrong. But odds are what I'm going to do is fracture a relationship. And so again, like there's no perfect science to it, but that became a huge part for us is how do we help them? We were never going to project our faith onto them. It was always gonna be like, look, man, if you want to go to church and follow Jesus, that's up to you. We're not going to make you do it. We're not going to sit at home and do, family Bible studies. Like that's just not who we are. But we would encourage you to pursue this, and we're going to do our best to model it. And I'll let you know if that works out. Like I don't know yet. It's worked out with our daughter. Like she's the well-adjusted one of the family. And she's really has embraced her faith and embraced relationships. She's super relational. Keegan's awesome. He's the responsible one in the family. So like my mom just did her living trust. And so I get to be the executor. If for some reason I'm not there, then my wife does. And the third one is Keegan, our middle son. She actually put him in the trust and the will as third because we don't trust the other two with the money. And so he's like, he's faithful. He's going to college. He's working. He has his friends. He loves his online video games, and he's just he's the stable force. So they're all very unique. They've all experienced ministry, good and bad. When we were church planting, they were the sound guy and the tech guy and the setup and teardown crew. They were all those
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And they paid a price, and yet they still get it. And I think our authenticity as a family has been a part of what's helped that continue forward.
That's fantastic. No, whenever you can get the whole family involved in stuff like that, especially, it's
Mhm.
just nothing but positive. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, I wish you luck with all of that with the three
Thank you.
PKs. So for sure,
Yes. Thank you.
but always a different dynamic. Now, have any of the kids read the book or listened to the podcast or gotten involved at all, or are they just, man, Dad is doing some stuff. He's online and stuff. I don't even want to know.
Yeah. I probably think they think I'm cooler than I am. And I don't know if you see my shirt. My shirt
I
says I
saw
used to
this.
be cool. Yeah.
I saw
So
the shirt. I was going to say something at the end, but yeah, I used to
yes,
be cool.
a
Right.
hundred percent. Yeah. It's my
Okay.
favorite shirt to wear. Um, my daughter has, I don't think she's read the book. She's definitely worked through, she knows the stories and she's gone through it. She actually gave a copy of it to a friend of hers that was going through a really hard time. And that friend texted her over the weekend, was like, your dad wrote a really cool book. And so there's a 14-year-old girl that's reading the book because my daughter recommended it to her, which is kind of
Cool.
cool.
Yeah.
The boys have copies. I don't know that they've read it, but they know the stories. They're
The
not,
boys have copies.
they have copies of it.
They have the book.
They have the book. They lived a lot of it. But I did warn them because in the book, I'm really honest. I'm honest about growing up with pornography being bathroom reading material and how that had its hooks in me and how that cycle had to get broken early on in my wife's and my marriage. And so I warned everyone. I was like, look, like heads up, I don't hold back in this. Like I tell the story as it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I mean, it would be great if we got that kind of support from our kids, but most of us don't. I
Yeah.
think,
They
I
have
think,
copies of the book. If I had done an
right.
audiobook, I probably had a better chance.
I actually brought my boys on episode 300, to kind of celebrate that
Awesome.
it was 300. It was a great episode, but that also is probably the only episode they've ever heard. It's the one that they were on. So,
That's great.
I mean, this is how it happens. I get it.
Yeah.
But and in addition to that, just tell me briefly, you got music that you put out there. You got Substack, that you work
Mhm.
on. Touch on those in case people want to find you there too.
Yeah, the Substack's really good. It's been a fun place to kind of talk about things adjacent to the book. I have a lot of thoughts and ideas, and so and it's just the practice of writing. You know this, right? Like there's something about doing it. Like you just want to keep doing it, and so, there's everything from my observations around online arguing in the church, down
Hmm.
to how we love one another, down to things about the wilderness in my own story. So, and then some leadership stuff. I'm starting to put more thought and emphasis into some of the like leadership things and just providing insights and resources that people might find helpful. And so that's really the kind of the core of the Substack. And then yeah, the music is kind of funny. Like when I released the book, I was kind of going through a nostalgia thing and listening back to some old songs I had written, some old worship songs, and realized that a lot of the lyrics had this wilderness theme in them, which is really interesting because we're talking 20 plus years ago, that I was already wrestling with that incongruence, that sense
Hmm.
of like, I want to just be honest. I don't want to pretend. But there's this thing about I see about how we're supposed to kind of just everything's supposed to be okay, but it's not okay. So I was writing about that. And so that led me on a like, can I refurbish these? And so, collect some friends and start to kind of refurbish it. And so we built this thing called the Wilderness Worship Collective. And we're working through writing new songs, refurbishing old songs that we feel are helpful, and are releasing a single every month or so right now, with the full album to be finally released in September, Lord willing.
Wow. All right. Very cool. Now, I'm assuming all this stuff can be found on your website.
My website is the best hub to start at. Yep.
That's where I found most of it. So,
Yes.
exactly.
That's the kind of the launching point.
All right. So, before I hit you with my final question, we kind of wrap things up here. Tell everybody, what is your contact info? Give them the website, how to reach Dustin, that type of thing.
Yeah. So the website is dustinkleinschmidt.com. It is phonetic. I know the last name is a lot. I did test this, and if you type KL and then a bunch of letters, Dustin KL something, odds are Google's going to find me. Um,
There you go.
my SEO is at least that good. So it's Kleinschmidt, KLEINSCHMIDT. There's also on socials, I have Walking the Wilderness Way. I have my own socials for my name. Yeah. So, and there's contact forms, people, if they want to reach out, they want to ask questions. The book's available on Amazon and stuff, but the music's on Spotify and Apple Music, all the normal places that you would put that kind of stuff. And yeah, for me, it's just about all these different ways of having the conversation.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right, brother. I appreciate all of that. You've got a lot going on. You were doing a lot of different things to help people. And, I know that some of this is going to be useful to some people who are listening right now. So, as we kind of wrap this up, let me throw it to you, for a minute and let you kind of, do a little bit of a wrap up here. Is there anything I didn't ask you out of all these millions of things you have going on? Anything that maybe we talked about, but you want to make sure we double down on, or any, sort of parting thoughts, message for our audience? I'm going to let you have the floor for the last minute or two. Go for it.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Rory, for your time. Thank you for just having me on and giving me the opportunity to share my kind of my heart and my story. And I think the thing that I personally have been really anchoring myself in lately, and I do think it helps, is we were talking about the practical, like, so what do we do with this? Like, life is beautiful and broken at the same time.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that information. And so what can we actually do? And for me, in the last month, Psalm 37 has been the anchor, and it says, trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. And then it continues on. But that phrase, I've memorized it and I just keep every day. So trust in the Lord. Like that's kind of obvious. Okay. Like God, you know better than I do. And so my instinct is to trust myself more than you. And so I want to orient myself to say, I trust you, and then do good. What's the next right thing? Jesus said that tomorrow has enough worries of its own. And so what's today look like? What do I do today? So trust the Lord, do good, dwell in the land, live here and now. I may want that other opportunity or that other job, but right now, like I'm in this job. I have this family. I'm in this circumstance. We're in this season. We live in this town. So, what does it look like to dwell in the land where I'm at, to be where I'm at? Because when the psalmist wrote this, we're talking about a nation that was in exile, like they weren't in their homeland. So, dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. That when we get to eternity, it's not going to be well done, good, and extraordinary servant. It's going to be well done, good, and faithful servant. And so faithfulness is the win, not being cool, not being hip, not, you know, being excellent necessarily. All those are good things, but ultimately am I being faithful? Am I being faithful to my spouse? Am I being faithful to my kids? Am I being faithful to myself, to my God, and to the people I care about? And so that has been kind of like when you think about kind of the messiness of our world and the messiness of life, and goodness gracious, you don't have to be online long to see how chaotic it can be, right? To pull all of that in and just go, okay, what does it look like for me to trust in the Lord, to do good, to dwell where I'm at, and to befriend faithfulness above all things? And so that would be my encouragement. That'd be my closing thought, and just encourage that. I mean, people, you can synthesize your world down into really bite-sized pieces.
Nice. Very well said. That was a great close. I know you
Thank you.
wrap everything up just nicely for us right there. So I appreciate that, folks. Author, coach, former pastor, father to three PKs, and moving on. The podcaster, Substack guy, musician, and lots and lots and lots of other things here too, folks. Dustin Kleinschmidt, thank you for being here with us, Dustin, and for sharing everything you did. I know that somebody is going to get something out of this, and you're going to help somebody out there. And I think that's why we all do what we do. So thank you, brother. Appreciate you
Yes.
being on.
Rory, thank you so much. I am honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Folks, this has been another fantastic episode of the Power of Man podcast. And the reason we bring these powerful men on here with these powerful messages is because we are united in hoping that you can find your power so you can become a better protector, better provider, better leader tomorrow than you are today, so that you can become a better father, better husband, better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason we want that for you is because you matter. It's because you have value, and it's because you're worth it. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.